The most compelling evidence for a global flood is the sediment record itself. All over the earth, what's under your feet, hundreds of distinct horizontal layers, generally with smooth interfaces between the layers. The only way that such a record could have come into existence is global scale processes producing the whole record in a single global event.
All over the world, the layers are flat and there's no river channels in them. Think about what you see at the Grand Canyon. You see these flat pancakes, one on top of another, just flat, 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 flat. They're basically erosionless. Here's how they formed. At the beginning of the flood, there was movements of the crust. Crustal movements actually cause earthquakes. Earthquakes in water cause tsunamis. The tsunamis then originating from the ocean areas would then race across the continents. Once the tsunami lost its power, the sediment would settle down out of the water and form a flat layer at the bottom. That's the first layer. Then another earthquake in a different part of the world sets off a tsunami, maybe a week later, maybe a day later, brings in a different sediment. The tsunami runs out of power in this area. The sediments in the water settle to the bottom and form another flat layer. There's no erosion. Again, you have a third tsunami bringing in these sediments, third layer.
My simulations indicate that these tsunamis were large enough for a single tsunami to sweep all the way across a continent.
These layers were formed underwater. That's why they were so confusing to so many people. It's fascinating to see the evolution scientists explain their dig sites. For example, at Dinosaur Provincial Park, they have 10,000 dinosaurs buried in this flat layer. And you ask the site paleontologist, well, how did these 10,000 dinosaurs get in this flat layer? Well, they died in a river in flood. Oh, what was the shape of the river bottom? It was a flat river bottom. So you're saying this river that was so strong that could bury 10,000 dinosaurs over 5 miles wide, which would be a raging river, wasn't strong enough to cause an erosion channel? Why isn't there a river cut from this river channel? Why isn't there erosion from that river? The answers make no sense in light of this flat problem, the erosionless problem.
What we see at the Grand Canyon is that the layers got bent at the edge of the plateau. Because the folding was smooth when the sediments were still soft, the whole sequence had to be formed rapidly during the flood and then bent at the end of the flood while they were still wet. And so these folds are very strategic evidence tying together all the layers, and it emphatically demonstrates that the millions of years never happened.
Or the fact that you have what are called polystrate fossils. They're usually trees that go through more than one layer.
These trees have 3 layers that are supposedly 30 million years worth of rock around them. You know that if you start accumulating sediment around the bottom, the sediment would eat away at the bark would rot, and the tree would die even sooner, would fall over even less than 100 years. But here we have trees, vertical, fossilized with 3 layers. In the worldwide flood, trees were swept up and they were floating on the top. Now, eventually, the trees became waterlogged and sank to the bottom. Now, trees normally sink horizontal, but some trees, as discovered by Dr. Steve Austin, when they sink vertically. If a tsunami wave comes, and there was a lot of tsunami waves during the flood, and brings in sediment, when the tsunami wave loses power, the sediment in the wave settles into a flat layer at the bottom. Maybe a week later or a day later, another tsunami wave comes in from a different direction. When the tsunami wave loses its power, the sediment begins to fall, and now it forms a second layer on top of the first, amongst this vertical tree that hasn't fossilized yet. Now, if that tree could be buried with 30 feet of sediment in just, say, a week, you could easily accumulate the entire Grand Canyon stacked layers in a year's time. It is the explanation that defeats the evolution time, and it actually defeats the theory of evolution. This is the single most important geological fact, and nobody seems to teach us in college or in the evolution world.
Evolutionists claim that the Earth is millions of years old, and one of their so-called proofs are stratified rock layers found within the geologic column. Evolutionists teach that each layer represents millions of years of rock formation based upon their uniformitarian view that says you can make assumptions about the past based upon processes today. But in doing so, you're assuming that there were no catastrophic events like a global flood. Evolutionists also ignore the flood evidence contained within these rock layers, like sea creatures mixed together with land creatures. Just ask any coal miner. Anywhere on Earth they dig, they find countless sea creatures embedded in the rock. You see, the Bible refutes evolution theory, stating that it has only been roughly 6,000 years since the beginning of creation, giving the true account of how the sedimentary layers formed, as sedimentary